In 1970, Morgan State University became the first historically black college to field an all-African American lacrosse team. A group of students, forged together by Miles Harrison Jr., created the first lacrosse team and broke the barrier in college lacrosse. I am standing where Morgan State Lacrosse was born and where they played most of their games, ranging from their 1970 to 1981 range. I'm here at the U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Fame, where I am conducting an interview with Dr. Miles Harrison, one of the original 10 Bears who played on the 1970 club squad and the 1971 varsity squad.
After football was over for me my freshman year, I saw many of the guys that I'd played against in high school who were also all MSA, and that's all Maryland Scholastic Association lacrosse players, including myself. There were 7 of us on campus, and the very next year the 8th one came on the campus. And as I saw all of us who were accomplished high school players and did not get recruited, I'm saying, guys, if we got together, we could be one heck of a team. The fortunate thing for me is I was a good student. I had been recruited for football, and that didn't happen. So I already had an entree to talk to the football coach, and I asked Coach Banks if we could consider doing a lacrosse team, because we had 7 guys who were all city players, and if we could just simply find a coach, I think we could field a very good team. And that's really how it started.
So when Earl Banks brought in Chip Silverman, a white Jewish 27-year-old who had little to no coaching experience, what did you think he would be like, not only as a coach but as a person?
The fortunate thing is, by the time that Chip was coaching, and I had a chance to judge that when it happened, I'd already started to know Chip the man. An amazing Renaissance man who understood young athletes and their egos, and so his ability to manage these strong athletic egos was something that I knew was going to be necessary for that team, because all of us have been all-state players, and all of us wanted the ball in our stick. So I really thought that he was a good selection. I just didn't know how much of a coach he'd be. To give you an example of that bond then, I'll talk about the bond now. We are now 30, 40 years out, are still getting together at affairs that happen here at the Lacrosse Center, going to major lacrosse games together. We have alumni games, not often now, about every 6, 7 years. So that bond that still occurs now, if you think about it, formed back then. And it was one of those, we were African Americans in a sport where we were not represented. One of the greatest players ever, Jim Brown, was about the only black player that we knew of. So the bottom line is that we relied on supporting each other's emotional stability, and that's what made us closer. Absolutely. Jim Brown was the only African-American elite lacrosse player that I knew of, and we all kind of wanted to be like Jim Brown. I found out about his escapades on the lacrosse field at Syracuse, and then subsequently the North-South All-Star game in '59, where he scored 6 times in the first half, and I'm told that didn't really play much the second half because of that. He was absolutely, unequivocally the role model that we all patterned ourselves after. Clarence Davis, as you called him, we call him Tiger Davis, and Tiger was a Vietnam vet. Many guys had gone to Vietnam and come back. I had a lot of guys I played high school ball with who never made it back from Vietnam, and so that was a very emotional time. A lot of us were in the process of being drafted into the Army when the war was called off. So the emotion of that, the civil rights movement kind of bubbling to a head. Martin Luther King had been assassinated in '69. So there were a lot of things that were driving the emotional atmosphere of America. And in the midst of that, we're trying to start a lacrosse team. And the person who characterized that best was Tiger Davis, saying that what was going on those lacrosse fields against all-white teams bore resemblance to what was going on in America in terms of the civil rights movement. So it was extremely emotional, and I do believe that was some of the impetus for us to play as hard as we did. Several years later, when I recognized what you said, it made me feel wonderful. But at no point, when I played that one senior year, I had 3 years of eligibility left. But the NCAA team didn't start until my senior year, 1971. I graduated and went on to med school. My last competitive lacrosse game was the North-South All-Star game in '71. So there were no feelings of that accomplishment until '75, when that team beat Washington Lee, and you'd start reflecting on it. Boy, look at what we built. And it wasn't until many years later that we realized the historical perspective on it. A lot of people who interviewed me to start, when did you realize that this was going to be something that would make history? About 35 years later. It wasn't something that I knew beforehand. But Chip Silverman called through the University of Pennsylvania Medical School to try to get me, and I called down to the dean's office. There's a call for you from your college lacrosse coach. And sorry guys, it was Chip saying that, boy, that they'd beat Washington Lee, so that was a really big moment. Excuse me. That was a really, really big moment. And at that point, we started to realize exactly what we had accomplished with starting that team, and that we had validated that whole journey with that victory. If you level the playing field, I can do anything anybody else can do.
After finishing that season, Chip thought that they were an NCAA caliber team and put in a bid for them to move up to a varsity level squad. This would be the season that they officially broke the color barrier and became the first HBCU to play collegiate lacrosse. The following year, in 1971, they maintained a winning record of 8-4 with triumphs over Swarthmore College, Amherst College, and Worcester College. Standout player Miles Harrison Jr. later played in the North-South All-Star game, this being the highest honor you could achieve at that point. Other standout, Wayne Jackson, was a 3-time All-American at Morgan, earning the honor in 1971, 72, and 73. The Bears were ranked nationally 4 out of their first 5 seasons in the NCAA and made the championship tournament 2 times in their 10-year history. In 1975, the Bears were involved in one of the biggest upsets in all of college sports to this day, their triumph over Washington and Lee. Here in my hand I have the game ball that was used in the 1975 upset over Washington and Lee. In all, my topic of the Morgan State lacrosse team broke barriers by becoming the first HBCU to play collegiate lacrosse. In especially hard times in the 1970s, the all-African-American lacrosse team had huge upsets over Division I opponents Washington and Lee, Notre Dame, Villanova, and more. They contribute to breaking barriers because of what they did in that time as African Americans that changed the game forever. Being in a racially present 1970s, the 10 Bears found the sport of lacrosse as a time to prove a point, that they were equal to the whites. Especially in a contact sport, they were able to show that they were mentally and physically tough, dealing with the toughness of the sport and the mentality of racial slurs being thrown at them. The legacy of the 10 Bears lives on, as one of the former players, Dr. Miles Harrison, is now supporting his son, Kyle Harrison, as he competes in the PLL after playing collegiately at Johns Hopkins University. There's now exhibits, books, and articles telling the brave and tough story of the Morgan State lacrosse team and their fight for equality in the Creator's game.